All right, we should be live now. Thank you for your patience. Had some difficulty getting our friend Thunderous One to connect via the web conferencing software. Uh, Allaah is doing his best to interfere with this chat. He apparently does not want anyone to know that he is a major committer of shirk and thus, according to his own rules, is condemned to hell. However, in the end, he isn't all that great. So we were able to figure it out and we are now connected. Thunders has been on my channel a couple of times before, but not like in the last year. So I'll give him a chance to introduce himself, tell us a little about what he does, right after we open with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for the technology that allows us to connect with fellow believers and unbelievers from all around the world. We ask that you be with us today, that you guide our discussion, and that you prevent us from theological error. We ask that the technology work well today, despite our limited abilities to use it, and that there are no interruptions in today's stream. We ask everyone watching to approach the material with an open mind, and we ask that you open hearts and minds to seek you. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So, without further ado, Thunderous, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Right, so I'm Thunderous One. I have my own little YouTube channel where I put up clips. I met Lloyd de Jong several years ago. We were both panelists on another polemic site or YouTube channel discussing Islam, obviously, but we were on an atheist channel that were discussing Islam. So we removed ourselves after a little while because they considered our comments were more apologetics for intelligent designs. Sadly, Lloyd and myself lost contact, but then we met. Thaddeus, I came across your channel and I offered myself for an interview and give you a little bit of history of my background. I'm from a Muslim background, so I'm an ex-Muslim. I'm 54 years old. I've been an ex-Muslim, I guess, since I left home at 16, seeing the flaws of the religion from a very early age. That's not to suggest that I'm a particularly smarter person than most people. It's just that I had probably had a little bit more courage than most people. So I've been doing this for a little while now, but the thing is, when I was doing it, there wasn't such thing as social media, YouTube, TikTok, and these things. So it was very much face to face. I'm not very, if you like, clued up on these new formats and things. So it takes me a little while to get used to it. But other people have streamed ahead, people like yourself, Thaddeus and Lloyd, doing excellent work. So it's a wonderful opportunity for me to spend time with you guys and discuss the things that I like to discuss about Islam. Some of the things I've learned over the years, found out, like this one evening, it was one ayah in the Quran that was a catalyst that led to other things that I've actually discussed this several years ago on the Gin and Tonic show. So I'm using that information that I used then with a little bit further information and research that I've done, bringing it out tonight. I like to do things that are a little bit original. I've done a couple of chats on your show already, Thaddeus, as you know, Islam and 124,000 prophets and 90 for Adam. So we've got a little bit of experience of discussing things with each other. I've done a few things with Lloyd on his channel too, which is a wonderful privilege as well. So yeah, I guess that's basically me.
Excellent. Yeah, I think we've had 3 shows, and you were also on a 4th one, which was part of a panel. So you've been on a few times, but it's been a long while. So everyone, if you aren't familiar with his material, be sure to check those out. Got very good feedback on those. People really enjoyed them. Thunderous has a very blunt personality. He says things the way they are, and a lot of people appreciate that. I'm a little bit nicer. I beat around the bush a little bit, and he just gets right to the point. So we're very happy to have him on today.
Okay, so this one is actually the way I like to discuss Islam is one has to bear in mind that Islam claims to be a further addition to the Judeo-Christian narrative. So that is to say, Allah has revealed the Mosaic Law and 3 or 4 books in the Bible. He had the Prophet Jesus, but not according to our recension. And the Quran has come to confirm the Bible, but with a totally different narrative. So my point is, sometimes when we're discussing Islam, we tend to forget that lineage, so to speak, of the Judeo-Christian narrative, and then along comes Islam. So I'll try to keep things in, let's see if it's consistent with the narrative that Jews and Christians know that are real. And this is one of those that is shirk, or testimonies, or swearing an oath, as it were. So I'm not going to dwell too much on the Hebrew scriptures with this, though I have put, I've asked you to put some links in the show notes that will take people to about 2 or 3 websites that will discuss oath taking or oath making in the Hebrew scriptures. So there's a little bit of history there that I don't feel I need to go into, but I am going to touch on what Jesus had to say about oaths. And then we're going to look at the modern day, and then we're going to have a little bit of fun and go into the Quran and look at what's going on with Islam and the Quran, and also what the Hadith have to say about oath making and shirk as well. So what I'll do is, and we're going to start with, if I may, is Ecclesiastes chapter 5, and I'm just going to read a couple of verses here just to give a bit of background as to what oath making should be. Oath making is, in the sense, from Ecclesiastes. I'm actually going to read from verse 3 to 6. It says here, "For as a dream comes with a multitude of cares, so a fool's speech with a multitude of words. When you vow a vow to God, don't defer to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay that which you vow. It is better that you do not vow, that you should vow and not pay. Do not allow your mouth to lead you into sin. Don't protest before the messenger that this was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands?" So what do we learn from that? Well, what we learn is we shouldn't be very frivolous in oath making. It's a serious thing in God's eyes. But however, with the nation of Israel, as we're going to go into, the oath making became exactly that, frivolous. So just to read some commentary that I've got here, oaths had their proper place according to the Mosaic Law. However, the use became so common in the everyday life of Jesus' contemporaries that there was a tendency to reverse practice practically every utterance by swearing to it. This frivolous practice was intended to add credence to one's statements, yet Jesus twice denounced it. Instead, Jesus taught, just let your yes mean yes and your no, no. According to the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, that the inclination of the Jewish people to confirm all possible statements by an oath was very strong by the discern from the passages of the Talmud, which painstakingly specifies which oaths were to be considered binding and which were not. So what we're seeing here is that from the times of the nation of Israel, when oath making started, there was a seriousness about it. And of course there would be, because they had a relationship with God where their relationship was reinforced by acts of God. One has to consider the 10 plagues of that took place in Egypt, the parting of the Red Sea, the protection of the nation of Israel with the 40-year trek. The clothes didn't wear out, and God provided manna from the heavens. The walls of Jericho falling out. All the wars that they fought, the fire that came from heavens at Mount Carmel with Elijah. So Jehovah Yahweh was a very real God to them. He proved who he proved to be with them. So he wasn't some kind of abstract concept that made statements but didn't back them up. The God of the Bible backs up his statements. So they had a very real relationship with him. So going back to Jesus then, so Jesus was not alone in condemning these abuses. For example, the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus said of a Jewish sect, swearing they avoid, regarding it as worse than perjury. For they say one who is not believed without an appeal to God stands condemned already. The Jewish apocryphal writing known as the Wisdom of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus 23:11, likewise states, a man given to swearing is lawless to the core. Jesus then condemned the practice for taking oaths lightly. If we speak the truth at all times, we should not have to take an oath to make our words more believable. So we can also see, if we go to Hebrews, I just want to read this one last section of the Bible, and then we'll go into the modern day. And it's taken from the book of Hebrews, chapter 16, verse 13 onwards, where it says, "For when God made his promise to Abraham, since he could not swear by anyone greater, he swore by himself." Bear that in mind. Since God could not swear by anyone greater or anything greater, because there's nothing greater than God, he swore by himself. So there's a pattern there from the intelligent designer or the God of the Bible. Now, to the modern day, when a person makes an oath or swears by another person, the person who is the object of the oath or sworn by is seen as being of greater value than the person actually making the oath. For example, a person swears by or makes an oath on the lives of their children, their parents' deathbed, or their marriage mate, hence highlighting the significant value as superior to their own life, but also testifying to the value of the reason for the oath in the first place. For example, a plea of innocence or the fulfillment of a vow. Objects are taken for oaths too. When a person swears by or makes an oath based on an object, they're testifying as to the objective value of the object taken as collateral for the oath. Example being, a person may make money or gold or a house or a car or any other item collateral of an oath. Likewise, also, they are highlighting again the validity of the matter for the oath in the first place. So, to summarize, if you heard somebody swear by their mother's deathbed or their children's life or by their car or whatever, if it's you can see that there's a truth there to what they're trying to appeal to, the statement that there is a truth, because they're putting up a collateral that's so high. So the oath kind of has a binding reality to it. Otherwise, a collateral means nothing. For instance, two oaths based on collateral of minimal or irrelevant value are likewise not taken with any seriousness. A person who swears by a used tampon would be seen as foolish as a person who swears by a scorpion, dung beetle, or an electric kettle. So likewise, with Allah, repeatedly swearing by objects who, from an objective point of view, are significantly less than he is merely highlighting the perversity of his oath, as well as the valuelessness of the reason for the oath in the first place. Did you get that, Mr.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll get to the specifics here in a second, but we'll see that Allah swears by all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
All kinds of things which any Muslim would say are inferior to Allah, yet they won't recognize that there is a problem. Before that, I want to take a couple comments from our good old friend Safraz, who has been reduced recently to just leaving comments in the chat. He has lost his guts to come on and talk to us live for some reason. Anyway, he quotes Quran 2:171, "They are blind and deaf and dumb and will never return," which that only is relevant if Allah is worthy of worship, if he is God, if he is infallible. Safraz, why don't you pay attention a bit here, and then you answer to us why your God likes to swear by things that are inferior to him. He refused to give me a real answer, and he said, "Be a man, come on EF Dawa live in a couple hours, bring that pathetic old argument which had been answered many times." Well, you know, Safraz, if it's been answered many times, then you shouldn't have any problem answering it either. And strangely, EF Dawa has no interest in talking to me or any of my other apologist friends. They only want to talk to people who are ignorant. Strangely enough, they don't want to talk to knowledgeable Christians. Here on this show, we will take anyone who wants to call in. You know, if the EF Dawa boys have some guts and they want to call in, we're not going to hang up on them. We're not going to screen out their calls. We're not going to prevent them from calling in. Yet that's what they do. And then dumb Muslims like you think that they're so wonderful because they only let people who have no knowledge about anything onto their show to talk to. Just amazing stuff. And then finally, he said, "Is this guy," referring to you, Thunderous, "a scholar?" And then he left 4 laughy faces. Of course, Safraz himself is not a scholar. He is just some guy by his own admission who doesn't have any knowledge, yet he thinks he's qualified to talk. So he is a hypocrite for using this argument that you're not that you are not a scholar, therefore we can't listen to you. It's also a logical fallacy, in addition to making him a hypocrite. And then finally, he claimed that he destroyed me and Mary on Isaiah 42, which is amazing since Mary wasn't even involved. You came out with pathetic excuses saying the prophecy has not been fulfilled, which is a lie. You want to see a lie? Read this comment. I most certainly did not say that the prophecy has not been fulfilled. You were the one who showed absolutely no knowledge of Isaiah 42. You didn't even know what the passage was called in scholarship. Every single question I asked you, you had no answer to. You had 5 hours to discuss this passage. And all you could do is say, well, I don't know. Maybe it could be about Muhammad. I don't know when Muhammad fulfilled that line. Over and over again for 5 hours. You had nothing to offer. You even admitted as much live. And then the next day you come back and we're like, I destroyed you. I destroyed you. Yeah. Anyway, it's recorded on my channel. Anyone can go look at how much you destroyed. Your own reputation is the only thing you destroyed. All right. Enough with that distraction. Let's go back to your presentation.
Yeah, so if we go to the screen share now, what I've done is, if you look up, there's a principle in the Bible, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, which reads, all scriptures inspired of God, beneficial for teaching, for reproving, and for setting things straight. And that's the point. It's not Christians that define Christianity. It's the Bible that defines it. Okay, and there's another principle brought out, 1 Corinthians 4:6, where it says, learn the rule, do not go beyond the things written. So the Bible defines what Christianity is, and we don't go beyond what the book teaches. It's as simple as that. If we as those who support the biblical narrative are conscious that that is the guideline or the principles that we have to follow, we then have to take those principles to other religions as well. The Hindu doesn't define Hinduism. It is their text that defined it. And it's the same thing with Muslims. Muslims do not define Islam. The Quran and the Hadith define Islam. So what I want to do is, using that principle, is just bring some texts up from the Quran here, and these are the ones that where Allah is reaffirming the Quran and its clarity several times. And if you look at the top left corner, it will tell you, for instance, the order that they're in the present day Qurans. Okay, so if you look at the top, it says number 1, Al-Baqarah 2:2, so that's chapter 2 verse 2. But you'll notice in parenthesis there's 87th revealed. What that means is that's the Quran is a compilation of chapters from the longest to the shortest. So it's not a collection that's been put in revelation order. It's been put in longest to the shortest order. And one of the phrases I have is, if you read it the way it is now, it's confusing. But if you ever read the Quran in order of revelation, it becomes devastating, because the Quran just falls apart if you read it in the timeline sense. So even though this is chapter 2 verse 2, which is something you'll read as the second chapter, it's actually the 87th chapter that was revealed. One needs to bear this in mind in the discussion that we're going to be having today when we look at what Allah swears by, when we look at those Quranic texts. So this is saying this is a book made clear, a book where there is no guidance. So you'll notice I've gone to Quran X, where you can have several translations, or let's put it in Islamic parlance, where we can have several versions of the Quran come up. And one of my favorites is the Hilali Khan version, and you're going to see why I like that later. But this is a book where there is no doubt guidance for the God-fearing. Right, okay, let's see what else we got. Alif Lam Ra. Oh, I don't know what that means. A book whose verses are set clear, then distinguished from one, all wise, all aware. If you look at the Hilali Khan translation or version, it says these letters are one of the miracles of the Quran, and none but Allah knows their meaning. Well, that kind of contradicts what it said earlier on when it says the verses are set clear. If we don't know what these mean, but Allah does, that's a contradiction. Well, moving forward, nothing to see here, I guess. Alif Lam Ra. Let's look at the Hilali Khan version. These are more miracles. Look at that. But it's in a manifest book. Surely Allah's going to clear this up at some point. Right. Alif Lam Ra. These are the signs of the book of a manifest Quran. Or, if we look at the corpus, Quran clear. Are we getting the sense of what Allah's trying to say in his book now?
Well, he's kind of contradicting himself in that verse, right? I mean, you don't even have to go beyond the verse, and it's not clear what he's saying.
Exactly that. So what I'm saying, what I'm trying to do here is just bring up a precedence of Islam, and notice in the top corners where all these things are being revealed. They're being revealed very much at a later stage. Okay, so this is obviously Al-Nam, chapter 27, but it's the 48th revealed. See, those are those miraculous letters again. These are the verses of the Quran that makes things clear, a clear book. So there's a pattern of how their versions have translated this ayah. A clear book yet again, a clear book. Yet again, we move forward. Quran, those who have knowledge. That's interesting. Those who have knowledge. So why would we need to go to scholars for dollars? Anybody should read in the Quran, in the book that's made clear, should be able to understand it and therefore gain knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. We shouldn't need any scholars to tell us the meaning of the Quran. Of course, no Muslim, well, I shouldn't say no Muslim, few Muslims have the guts to actually read the Quran for themselves. They only know what the scholars tell them. Another one of the many contradictions of Islam.
Exactly. Their faith is predicated not on the Quran and the Hadith. Their faith is predicated on what they get from their scholars. And this is another one here. It says, this is the book. I'm going to the Hilali Khan version, whereof there is no doubt. So anybody reading this should have no doubt about what the Quran teaches. And it's an often pattern, often repeated thread that goes through the Quran. Alif Lam Ra, these are the miracles of the Quran. That in itself, Thaddeus, is a discussion in itself where we discuss the 29, 30 odd verses or ayahs of the Quran where they have these letters where nobody knows what they mean, but it's a book made clear. And you'll notice Muslims love to use the word miracles. You know, it's a word that Muslims will use and then reinvent as to mean something, you know, in their recension. So that could be a discussion we can have in the future as well. This basically is just going forward. So I'm really emphasizing that the Quran makes it quite clear. This is a book made clear. It's a book easy to understand, a book with which there is no doubt. Right, so I just want to get something else up now. Right, we're going to go to the Quran again now. This time we're going to go to what Allah has to say here about Shirk. Now, notice this. This is Al-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 48. But look where it is in the Quran. It's actually the 92nd chapter revealed. And notice what Allah says here. God forgives not that aught should be with him associated, lest that he forgives to whomsoever he will. Whoso associates with God anything is indeed forged a mighty sin. So if I was to ask you, how do you interpret that, Thaddeus? What are you reading?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, at least in this verse, you know, you might get a different opinion if you go somewhere else, but at least in this verse, that anyone who associates partners with Allah, or in other terms, commits shirk, cannot be forgiven.
Cannot. Is there any way out of this?
Not in this verse.
Okay, no, absolutely. Now, if you go into my YouTube channel, I've actually put up a video there where Faker Naik's son, Farik Naik, has actually said, if you die, okay, how did he put it? He said that you can be forgiven for shirk if you've asked forgiveness before you die, but if you die without asking forgiveness, then it won't be forgiven of you. Do you see the little wiggle room that they've given themselves there in trying to appeal and to soften the image of Allah in this? They've had 1400 years of saying if you commit shirk, it's unforgiven. Now they're beginning to bend the rules a little bit and play on translation by saying, in this book that's made clear, well, actually, is it really that clear then? Doesn't sound so, does it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can either trust the clear words of the Quran and say that it's unforgivable, or we can trust the clear words of the scholars who are supposedly experts in the Quran, in which case is forgivable. But that would mean that the words of the Quran aren't clear, which means the Quran is wrong. Not looking so good for the Quran so far.
Okay, so we've got one ayah in the Quran that confirms that shirk will not be forgiven, and that's from the Muslim God themselves. Now we're going to see what Muhammad had to say on the subject of shirk. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through a few and just bring them up. So in this one, it says, if anybody wants to freeze or pause the video at a later stage, you'll see I've taken this from sunnah.com. Okay, so that's the official Muslim website for hadith. And you'll see what classification it has if they've given it a classification, but you'll be able to see the book number and the hadith number there as well, and which book it comes from. In this case, Sahih al-Bukhari, and it reads there, the Prophet said, if anybody has to take an oath, he should swear only by Allah. Notice that. Do not swear by your forefathers or your fathers. Moving forward, it says there, swear by Allah when you are speaking the truth. Moving forward, say he who swears by anyone but Allah is a polytheist. So, if you swear by anything else other than Allah, you're a polytheist. Notice that. Then it goes on to swear or be silent, to swear by Allah or be silent. If anybody takes an oath, he should swear by Allah. The people of the Quraysh used to swear by their fathers, but the Prophet said, do not swear by your fathers. So we're getting a pattern set here by Muhammad, only swear by Allah. Okay, I'm just going to quickly flip through these because it's basically the same thing. What you can do, if anybody wants, they can go to sunnah.com, just type in the search engine something like swear to Allah, and it'll bring up a lot more hadith. And there's some interesting hadith that basically says you can actually, when you swear to Allah and you find something different that you'd rather do, you can actually buy your way out of it. That is quite inconsistent with what we've read from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 5, verses 3 to 6, where it says, don't make an oath, because if you break the oath, you're going to look foolish. Whereas with Islam, well, if you can break it, that's all right. You just got to pay a fee. It's a bit like a fine. Yeah?
There are a couple comments that the text is too small. So if you have the ability on future ones to enlarge it, go ahead and do that. In the meantime, we have a comment from our Kitsune. Don't swear by Allah, swear for Allah. Very humorous. Never gets old. Right, so, never gets old.
No. Right. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at the Quran now. We're going to have a look at the verses that, or the ayah in the Quran that Allah swears by. So look at number 1. Right. This is taken from Yasin 36:2, but it's actually the 41st chapter revealed. It says, by the wise Quran. Really? Have you come across any wisdom in the Quran, Thaddeus? Anything wise?
Yeah, not much. I mean, there might be a few true statements here and there, but they're by far the out of the ordinary things.
Yeah. And this is a book made clear, a book easy to understand. Let's move forward. Surely Allah can do better than this. Saad. These letters, Saad, are one of the miracles of the... Oh, here we go again, the miracles of the Quran. Right, so by the Quran, full of what's going on here? Oh, there we go, it's gone. Full of reminding. By the what? By the clear book. What does it say your end, Thaddeus?
Yeah, it says clear, manifest, clear.
My word, moving forward. Surely Allah could do better. By the glorious Quran. So we're swearing on a book. Notice this, please. It's the 34th chapter revealed. What is the problem that you can sense here in this? If it's only the 34th chapter and it's saying it's a book, what problem do we have?
Well, I mean, it wasn't complete at that point. Then you could say that the Muslim, though, would say that it existed. It just wasn't revealed yet. So they might be able to get around that.
But they can't but there is no statement that says this book was in heaven before it came to earth at this point in the Quran thus far, is there?
Well, you know, if you want to disbelieve something, it has to be in the Quran. If you want to believe something, you don't need any evidence for it. This is the miracle of al-Islam. You just don't understand.
Yeah, I get that one. Right, so moving forward then, by the swift scatterers, by those scattering and dispersing, by the winds that scatter. So we're getting a clarification as we go through the translations as to what that verse means. But whatever it is, Allah is swearing by it. How do you swear by winds? What does that actually mean? Do you know?
That's a good question. I don't really know what it would mean to swear by the
How would you
wind.
apply it? How would a God apply that? I mean, if I swore by collateral or something, I would, if I'm making a testimony to God, I'm basically testifying to the authenticity of what I'm saying. And if I revoke on that, then there's obviously a calamity that's going to befall me for doing such a thing. So swearing shouldn't be taken lightly.
Maybe I have a theory here. Maybe if Allah swears by the wind, just as the example you used, and he breaks his oath, then the wind will stop obeying him, because the wind is on an equal authority to Allah. It has its own consciousness, its own ability to defy him or not.
Here we go to Al-Waqiyah 56:75. It's the 46th chapter revealed, and he's swearing by Arbery says falling stars, position of stars, falling stars, setting stars. What's the problem here, Thaddeus, do you think?
Well, I mean, a couple things. One, that stars don't actually set.
No.
Maybe we'll just. I guess the idea here is that Allah is swearing by the setting stars, and then they rise again, which affirms the truth of his claim. And then, of course, there's the fact that the star is just an inanimate object. So that's like the equivalent of swearing by a rock. There's no difference swearing by a rock or swearing by a star.
So. And the thing is, notice in Arbery it says there by falling stars. Well, Allah should know that there's no such thing. A falling star isn't something that falls. It is merely a meteorite that's hitting the atmosphere of the earth and bouncing off or ricocheting around. So how could Allah make such a mistake?
Well, I do like Maududi, who's changed it to the position of the stars, gotten rid of any indication of movement, almost like he knows better than his God that the stars don't set or fall.
Yeah, you do get the sense of that with Maududi. So moving forward again, I swear by that is indeed this is one I added in there. That is indeed a mighty oath. Did you but know it? So we'll go back to the previous one. So he says there, nay, I swear by the setting of the stars, and verily that is indeed a great oath, if you but know. My word, braggadocious. This is such a great oath. My problem with this is, if it's such a great oath, why did you need to continue making further oaths if this is by far the greatest?
Well, he has to make us really, really, really sure that he is telling the truth. So he swears by all the stars, which just coincidentally were thought to be pagan deities. Totally coincidence there. And then that wasn't good enough. So then he had to swear by the wind and by people and by all the other things that you'll bring up, because he just really didn't think people would believe him if he didn't swear enough.
Yeah, but this is indeed a mighty oath. If only you knew. Oh my days.
Yeah, well, I like that too. He affirms the mightiness of his own oath. This is part of the miraculous nature of Allah. He is so mighty that he affirms his own mightiness.
That's true. Moving on, I also wanted to bring this dictionary definition so Muslims can't argue with me. The word nay gets used, and it says there, or rather used to emphasize a more appropriate word than the one just used. Bear in mind, this is a book that's been in heaven for trillions of years. Okay? Allah couldn't get it right first time. Even when he's writing it, he has to correct himself. You'd have thought, hang on a minute, maybe I need to send the edited version down before, not this one. But he does.
Could you tell us what verse that was? Again, Karen just arrived.
Okay, that was Al-Waqiyah, chapter 55, verse 75, which is the 46th chapter in the Quran. That's the one that says, but nay, I swear by the setting of the stars. And verily, that is indeed a great oath. If you but know. My
Thank you.
word. Right then, so moving forward, by the pen, and that what they inscribe. Now, this one, I'm actually going to do something here a little bit different. We're going to go to, just for a little bit of fun, we're going to go, that's 68 verse 1. Right, 68 verse 1. Let's have a look and see what this is. The wonderful tool this is. Quranics.com. Go to 68 verse 1. Can you see what I'm doing there?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then we go, so we got 68 verse 1. No, it's not 61 verse 1. We want 68. 68 verse 1. Press go. Then if you click here, it says tafsirs. I wonder what the tafsirs got to say about this ayah. Click on that. Ibn Abbas. What does Ibn Abbas have to say here? And from this narration on the authority of Ibn Abbas, that he said regarding the interpretation of Allah saying Nun, Nun, he says, Allah swears by the Nun, which is the whale that carries the earths on its back while in water, and beneath which is the bull, and under the bull is the rock, and under the rock is the dust, and no one knows what is under the dust save Allah.
But somehow they knew about this whale and rock and dust.
What on earth could be under the dust, dude? Come on. I think he's been snorting some dust. That's what's going on here. But you see the problem. You see the problem. I mean, this is what their tafsirs are saying about Islam, that a whale, and Muslims won't have this. When you talk to them, but this is what their great scholars have said about the interpretations of the words that are at the beginning. But this pen, this is another thing that we can discuss sometime. The pen that Allah spoke to, who actually asked Allah, what do you want me to write? And then Allah told the pen what to write. So it's very much like Beauty and the Beast, where you had the talking teapot and the candlestick that was walking around having a conversation. Very much on that level we're seeing here. All right, so moving forward again. Known by the pen, that which they inscribe. Again, more miracles from the letters. I swear by that you see. Okay, that's kind of obvious. And by that you don't see.
Literally everything.
Literally everything. And that's the thing, isn't it? So what was the point of all the previous swearings? If all you had to say was, well, I'll swear by whatever you see. I mean, just to cap it off, I'll swear by, just to get my... to get all my ends covered, I swear by what you don't see either. I mean, this is frivolity at its worst, and this is coming from a God, a deity that Muslims follow. 1.7 billion human beings would support this. You really have to challenge not just the intelligence of their God, but the intelligence of the human beings that are following this.
Well, it is, it's easy to be deceived and deceive yourself, especially when you have a penalty of death for leaving Islam hanging over you. It's for many people, it's very easy to justify not thinking anymore when your choices are thinking and possibly being put to death or not thinking.
Very much so. Those are tangible and real fears, and we see that in Muslim. But you can understand why that they have those fears and why Islam prescribes those fears, because I think one scholar once said, if there wasn't the penalty of apostasy, nobody would be a Muslim. I think when you got statements like that being made, there's not really much more you can add to it. But moving forward then with Al-Marij, 70 verse 40, this is the 79th chapter revealed. I swear by the Lord of the East and the West that we have the power. That's taken from the Madudi translation, or the Madudi version. The interesting thing with that is I don't believe when some people who say that when the word we in the Quran is used, it's in the majestic sense, in an Elizabethan sense. I don't believe that, not for the slightest. I'm going to come to that later on. But I believe it's one of two things possible. In the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26, it says, let us, speaking in the plurality, make man in our image. Okay, so God is clearly speaking to somebody there. Let us make man in our image. One of two things is possible here. Either this is Muhammad or whoever the compilers of the Quran are have misunderstood what that verse means, and they've used it in that majestic sense, the we, or in my opinion, this is where the 50-50 partnership of the Quran comes through. Fear Allah, obey Muhammad. But we'll come to that in a moment. But suffice, that verse does not make sense when you have a deity swearing by the East and the West, and then makes the statement, we have the power. By the moon, and the night when it retreats. These are very much, everything that we're looking at here are very much abstract concepts, or they're abstract positions, you know. By the night when it retreats, how can you swear by that? Do you understand? Is there something I'm missing there?
Yeah, I don't actually know what that means. I guess it means he swears on the nights where you can see the moon, and he swears by the nights where you can't see the moon. Of course, Allah thinks that the moon has actually gone away, which it hasn't. It's just not visible from that particular part of Earth at that particular time. But hey,
But the thing is, what you're saying there, I will agree with what you're saying there, because when you look at things like the Dul-Qarnain, chapter 18, verses 83 to 95, or whatever it is, where it talks about the sun setting in a muddy pool, and the hadith that correspond, that Muhammad or Islam's understanding at that time was that these were objects that can do these things, that they were not celestial in the way that you and I or the rest of the world understand it today, but they understood it to be something completely different. I mean, you have stars asking for permission to rise or set. Well, the sun certainly does that. It goes back to its place and such. So I think that this here, when it talks about it says at the night when it retreats, okay, that's a gradual process. It's not, it's here one moment, then it's gone the next. A retreat is a gradual process. So I don't understand how you can swear by something that is a gradual process. If you look at the Hilali Khan, it says withdraws. Withdraws is a gradual process. Madudi says recedes. That's a gradual process. So I don't quite understand what Allah means by in his book Made Clear, a book easy to understand. And the dawn when it is white, or when it brightens up. Yet again, we're talking about gradual processes.
you know what I figured out is, see, Allah is swearing by the clock. That's what he's doing. He's swearing by all the different times of the day because he is subject to time. Time is not something he created. He is inside time, not outside of it. So that's why he can swear by all these things, because he's swearing by time. I think we figured it out.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it must be. Then here we go. I swear by the day of resurrection. How can you swear by that? I don't quite grasp, but moving forward, it's nonsensical. And nay, I swear by the soul self-accusing, or the Hilali Khan, and I swear by the self-reproaching person. How on earth can you swear by a person who's reproaching himself? That doesn't make any sense, not in the slightest. In the book Made Clear, in the book Easy to Understand.
So, yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means actually, just in terms of the plain words, but I can see that Allah is swearing by some sort of human being. So
Yes.
now he's appealing to human beings for his own authority.
Exactly that. And this is it, you see. This is where, and a self-reproaching person would be somebody that would be opposite to who Allah is, or what a Muslim is. So that would mean, if you look at the world's population today at 7.7 billion, you take 1.7 billion away, Allah is swearing by the other 6 billion. And by swearing, if you're making them equal, that must mean 6 billion human beings are equal to Allah, according to the logic of the Quran. In the book Made Clear, a book easy to understand. Nay, that word again, nay, more identifies more appropriate when more than one is just needed. Well. Moving forward then to number Al-Musalat, 77.5, and then cast Allah's remembrance in people's hearts, and by the angels that bring revelations to the messengers, and by those who extract the souls violently. So they don't just extract your soul, they extract it violently. Have you ever seen people who pass away peaceably? They just die in their sleep, or maybe they're in a hospital and they just die slowly, one here one moment, gone the next. Yet it says there, who die violently or souls are extracted. I mean, what does that actually mean? How can you swear by that?
Again, I don't really know what that means to swear by people dying.
Or swear by the angels who pull out their souls wickedly? Or,
yeah. Well, so if he's swearing by the angels, then that makes sense because he's swearing by a being that apparently gives him authority or is a greater authority that he can appeal to. But if he's just swearing by the souls being pulled out, as the words actually say, without the translator telling us that it's angels, then I don't know what that even means.
no, exactly that. Because you notice Arbery and Corpus, they don't. And the others, 2 of them, 4 of them actually have angels in parentheses. So they've added that there.
Yes,
They've
exactly.
had to work it out. They've had to work it out. Then it carries on. I swear by the slinkers, or I swear by the retreating planets. I swear by the planets that recede. I swear by the alternating stars. Well, are they planets or stars? Which one is it? I call to witness the planets, Yusuf Ali. How do you this? You know, the mind boggles with trying to understand. And the book made clear, and the book easy to understand. And we've already seen that we've got more swearing in here in this book so far than in the whole of the Bible, just by this one God thus far. I swear by the twilight. Is that Rod Serling is referring to in the 1960s? That the Twilight Zone, is he referring to that maybe?
No, I think it's the vampire series is what Allaah is swearing by.
Very good. Then we move to by the heavens and the constant. Haven't we been here before? Holding the big stars. What about the little ones? By the heaven with its impregnable castles. How did you get from stars to castles? Where? What?
You know, he's usually trying to make it better, but I think he makes it worse there because he's changed it from stars, which are like, you know.
But there's a damning translation there. Can you see which one it is?
Zodiacal signs.
Exactly that. And it's supposed to be free from any kind of the Quran's supposed to be free from any kind of spiritualistic practices and paganism as such. Yeah, it's got zodiacal signs there. How on earth does that get missed?
Yeah, I think that the ones that have translated stars there are being a little disingenuous. Exactly. Constellations, I think that's probably reasonable translation. Maududi realized that it wasn't stars, so he made up something else to try to hide that it was the constellations, which are the same thing as the zodiacal signs in traditional belief.
Amazing. Then by the heaven and the night star, night corner, bright star, the night visitor. How do you get to that translation? But moving forward, because this is all silly, by the dawn, and then and the night 10 and the 10 nights. I swear by the 10 nights. What, I don't quite understand this. And Yusuf Ali, the night's twice 5. I suppose that makes 10. It's about the only time I've ever seen mathematical figures in Islam work. But can you read that one for me, please?
And the even and the odd. So now he's swearing by numbers, or not even by numbers, by the properties of numbers.
By the properties of numbers. Exactly that. How on earth can you swear by these things?
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, imagine going into court and they're like, do you swear to tell the whole truth? And you're like, I swear by the odd numbers to tell the whole truth.
This is it. This is how we have to look at this. This is how we have to look at this. That if Allah was in a court of law, these are the things that he would say. I swear by this city. The interesting thing is, you'll notice they've got in parentheses Makkah. Hilali Khan does, as does the Sahih International. Now, 2 things on this. First of all, what city are they referring to? Because we know at the time when Muhammad around, Mecca wasn't a city. There's the strong arguments that have been put forward that Mecca didn't even exist until post Muhammad's death. So the parenthesis is being added clearly. But even if they want to buy the word city, what city are they referring to? Because it couldn't have been Mecca.
Yeah, well, I would guess that it was the city that Muhammad happened to be in at the time that this revelation was given, which is very interesting since this is the eternal word of Allah from before creation. Actually, we didn't even, that's a point we haven't even addressed yet, that this supposedly was written before creation. So he's actually swearing by things that didn't exist when he was making these swearings.
But this is what I was saying when it says neighbor, I swear by something greater that this is, but Allah sent down the unedited version. When he sent the Quran down to us, we should have had the edited version, the proofread version,
Yeah.
the one that the editor has gone through to get rid of the mistakes.
Sadly, the pen was being disobedient to Allah that day, and just wasn't writing the right words, and there wasn't anything Allah could do about it.
Yeah, sorry, Allah, it's a typo. Right, so by the sun and its morning brightness, by the sun and its brightness. This is, it's a repeat of the same thing, but Allah seems to keep going on and on, vowing or promising against inanimate objects or abstract concepts, or mathematical equations. None of this makes sense. From the same chapter, verse 2 now, by the moon, when she note what this is another thing as well. Notice what you're seeing in here. There's a couple of verses that are saying something that people don't pick up on. What do you think it is?
So the Halali Khan has given us a clue there by adding the sun for clarity. So he swears by the moon and as it follows it. So the moon, this is alluding to the traditional Islamic belief that the sun and moon chased each other around the earth, never catching up to one another, is what it's alluding to there, which of course is totally inaccurate picture of the solar system.
But also, if you look at Arbery and Yusuf Ali, what they added?
She.
Yeah, they've given it a gender. So you have to ask the question, what was going on in the Arabic for them to have actually put a gender in there?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And the day when it displays it, or Yabri, when it displays him. So who's it displaying? And yet again, it's the gender.
Yeah, I mean, it's not perfectly clear. I mean, Halali Khan is helping us out by making it clear, but we don't know if his guess is how to make it clear is right or not. We just don't know what it really says.
Right. So if we go back a little bit, so if we go to the first verse of this chapter, it says there, by the sun and his morning brightness, and by the moon when she follows him, and by the day when it displays him, and by the night when it enshrouds him, and by the heaven and that which built it, and by the earth that which extended it. So Allah has got Tourette's in this chapter because he swore 6 times already. And there's a 7 here, by the soul and that which shaped it and inspired it to lewdness and God-fearing. There is so much swearing in this chapter alone. You've got to say Allah's got a potty mouth.
Yeah. I can't answer for Allah there, unfortunately. Let me a couple of quick comments from the audience that I thought were worth bringing up here. Sola Scriptura, I swear by the moon and the stars in the sky. Sounds like Allah was listening to Boys to Men.
Yeah, boy.
And then Phil said, many of the oaths actually say, I don't swear by due to a misunderstanding, misreading of the text. Scholars tell us that Allah does, despite the negative, swear by whatever. So I'm not quite sure. I think this was probably sarcasm. It's probably a joke here. But if there are people who claim that it says I don't, that would be very interesting to see.
Yeah. And moving forward again, now to 9-2-1, Allaah. This is the 9th one reveal. I hope people are watching the order of these things because it's quite important. A lot of swearing has gone on by Allah, and they're all sort of like within an order of revelation, so to speak. we're just going to close upon these swears. The fig, Allah swears by the fig and the olive, and the Mount Sinai, and this land secure. And yet again, you've got Mecca, Mecca, Mecca 3 times by 3 translations or versions. Okay, so we come out of that. So we've seen quite a few swearings by Allah in this chapter, but I just want to go somewhere else now. I'm not very good at this. You have to forgive me, people. I'm very cumbersome. I'm not as methodical as Lloyd is. He's perfect at this sort of stuff, isn't he? These are what I call the suicidal ayah. So we're going to bring the... He is, isn't he? Right, so these are what I call the Allah's suicidal ayah. And notice what it says here. This is taken from Al-Azab 33:36. So this is the 90th ayah revealed here. And it says that it is not for a believing man or a believing woman when God has his messenger have decreed a matter to have the choice in the affair. Whoever disobeys God and his messenger have gone astray on the matter. What does that say to you?
So that, well, I'm not sure what you're alluding to, but the first thing that jumps off to me is that whoever disobeys God has gone astray. Fine. Whoever disobeys his messenger has gone into astray. I don't know about that. That's kind of putting them on the same level there.
Exactly that, because if you look at the Madudi as an example, it says it does not behoove a believer, male or female, well, Allah and his messenger have decided an affair. It's like Allah and Muhammad are talking to each other and making a decision, or coming to an agreement themselves before making a decision and passing it on to everybody else.
Oh, yeah, good point. The first half is even worse there, right? The decreed is even worse than gone astray, now that I think about it.
Yeah, so this is where it's, for me, it's like the fear Allah but obey me. Allah seems to be used to give fear to people, but really we're listening to the voice of Muhammad in all of this. You know, that's why I go back to where they say it's the plurality. It's if you like, the Queen, the Englishing, the Elizabethan English, the we, the majestic we. It's not in the slightest. This is a joint partnership in this religion, and in this verse alone, Allah has made Muhammad an equal. When Allah himself, and this is a book in heaven for trillions of years before it came to earth, Allah's already decided a matter before the man existed. His talks taken counsel from a man hasn't even existed yet. That's quite damning.
Yeah, I mean, that's the traditional Muslim belief. You know, a lot of Muslims today don't realize it, but the traditional belief is that Allah predetermined everything, that there is no such thing as free will. It's just a matter of waiting around to see if you're going to obey Allah or not, because you have no choice in the matter.
But even if you was to take that away, I hear what you're saying there. I totally agree with you. But even if you're just being kind to Muslims, they have to somehow get around this ayah of what this ayah says. Allah is putting Muhammad as an equal because he takes counsel from Muhammad and they come to a conclusion together. The verse is explicitly clear on this matter. Even if you go to Kuribali, it says that it's not for a believer, man or woman, to have the choice in the affair when a matter is decreed by Allah and his prophet. Whoso disobeys Allah and his messenger strays into clear error.
Yeah, you know, it's pretty interesting here that the standing of Muhammad seems to be the same as Allah. I mean, this only makes sense if he's pre-existent, if he has the same authority as Allah. It's almost like the Quran is just using two different words to describe the same being.
Exactly that. And this is the verse that was the catalyst for me to believe that this was a partnership. And this was sort of like about 20 years ago. And I only had this verse at the time. But then, to be honest with you, for me, I didn't need to go any further. So this was the one that set me on the Allah and Shirk discussion many years ago that I brought up on the Gin and Tonic show. I think there's one more in this file, and that is My favorite one here, and this is the one where David Wood and Mohammed Hijab had that discussion about Allah prays for. If you look at Hilali Khan, because the other translations tend to be very kind to that situation. But if you look at the Hilali Khan, it says that Allah sends his salat, and salat is what? Prayer. Who is Allah praying to? Allah has somebody above him if he's praying to him, and there's no way around this.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you can do is you can not answer the question like Hijab did, where he just pretended David said something different and hoped no one would notice. And it worked for a while. And then the Muslims in the audience noticed. They all cheered loudly. Yeah, he destroyed David by agreeing with him. But the other choice is to say that Allah is praying to himself, which is very interesting since, Muslims always say, well, who is Jesus praying to if he's God? He can't pray to himself. Of course, not understanding the nature of the incarnation or the Trinity, but they reject the idea that God can pray to himself. So, I don't know. It's got to be praying to something.
Yeah, and look at this verse here. I forgot to mention this earlier on. This is taken from a marriage, 1740. This is the 79th chapter revealed. Notice what it says here.
I like this. I swear by the Lord of the Easts and Wests. Who is that exactly?
Who is that Lord that Allah is swearing by?
I don't know. Must be a higher power. I mean, I think that's consistent with everything.
And it shows that, doesn't it? Even in principle.
I think we can get rid of all of these contradictions in the Quran if we just conclude that Allah is a demigod, that there's a God up higher than him. We get rid of all these problems. We get rid of the problem of him praying. We get rid of the problem of him swearing by the higher God's creation, because that creation still might be higher than him. Get rid of the problems of him swearing to the Lord of the East and West and so forth. Protestant believer asked how many Easts are there. I believe there are two, right? In traditional Islamic thought that there are two Easts and two Wests. And this is supposedly one of the scientific miracles of the Quran. There's two Easts and two Wests.
Notice this as well, and I've tried to emphasize this point, that when Allah says here in chapter 4, verse 48, to say, God forgive not, that out should be associated, with him associated, lest then he forgives. He forgives to whomsoever he will. Whoso associates God with anything has indeed forged a mighty sin. Notice it was the 92nd chapter revealed. You really have to ask the question, right? We've just read over about 25 ayah, maybe 30, because you've got one chapter where Allah's gone very potty mouth in his swearing with 8 swears. There was a couple of chapters where there's maybe 2. So we're looking at probably about 25, 30. He has swore about 30 times. And then all of a sudden, at the 92nd chapter, he says, if you swear anything by me, whereas he has set the precedence of swearing by anything else. Do you not think that this should have been the first one revealed?
Yeah, probably.
But he says this as a capstone to all the other ones. I find that a little bit strange as well. So Allah's been swearing about all these things, the things you see, the things you don't see. And this is a great swear in the other one that he said, this is, if you could understand this swear, you'd understand what I'm on about. But then he caps it with this ayah here, right at the end. That, for me, is a bit spurious.
So I've solved the problem here. You see, Allah abrogated his previous allowance of swearing by anything, and now he's only allowing swearing by himself. Yeah. So that's the solution here, because you can abrogate a moral law in Islam. So this would qualify, and I think it works. I'm not going to say that any Muslims come up with that solution, but I think that might actually work in the Islamic paradigm there.
You'll notice as well, for instance, okay, so I've written down some bullet points here. So the number of times, number one, the numerous times Allah has to swear over 20 plus years. So the Quran was revealed just over 20 years. So he swore, I've written down here 33 times in over 20 years, whilst being in heaven for eternity, with chapter 91 having Allah swear times eight times alone. The numbers don't seem to work there with how many times over 20 years from a book from heaven he has to swear. Who was he swearing to and why? So who is he swearing to? If this is a book, an all eternal book, what benefit do we have today from a book that was in heaven from trillions of years that gets revealed to Muhammad on earth over a period of 20 years where Allah is swearing over 30 odd times? What benefit is that for us today?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Allah really, really wanted us to believe him, so he decided to swear by everything imaginable in the hopes that we would believe him. But if I'm not mistaken, all that did is prove that he is not worthy of being believed in.
Well, the thing is as well, Allah should already know that given that he's supposed to be a continuation of the Judeo-Christian religion, he would know what's happened historically as far as earth is concerned and mankind and how frivolous swearing has become. So if swearing has become frivolous, and this is recorded in history, not just in scripture, but also historians have recorded this as well, why has Allah taken up a practice that's already been frowned upon? And when Jesus came along and condemned it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things. Allah knows best, I guess. He gives us this apparently invalid example of swearing by the stars and whatnot. Even if the Muslim's going to say that's not an example for human beings, well, why do you put it in there in the first place? If it's invalid for human beings, then you claim that your God is above his own morals, fine. It's not immoral for him to swear, but he's still providing a bad example, is he not?
Well, the concluding comment I've got on this is also that when you consider that Allah sent 123,999 prophets, Muhammad being the final, you'll notice that all the swearing that he does, all that potty mouth swearing, all that Tourette's, you'll notice that what he swears on is only familiar to the Jews and the Christians in that vicinity. If he had sent 123,999 prophets, as he claims he has done, why are all those things that he's swearing on only familiar to the people in the Middle East?
Yeah, good question. Another one of those mysteries. Everything about the Quran, when you read it, seems to indicate that it was written in the 7th century for 7th century people living in Arabia. But this is just the miracle of Islam. See, it only seems that way. In reality, it was written by an all-knowing God. And it would take a miracle for an all-knowing God to act as stupid as the God of the Quran does. Therefore, Islam is miraculous.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And there, based on the Quran itself, the Quran clearly proves that when it comes to shirk, Allah is the greatest of shirk committing.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I don't think that there's been any human being who has associated 100 billion partners with Allah, but Allah swore by the stars, therefore associating all 100 billion stars as partners with him. That's a lot of shirk.
I'll tell you, not only that, he swore by the things seen. He swears by pigs.
Indeed, he swears by pigs. That's just the ultimate there. Daduza Dude says Allah abrogated himself, and then Sola Scriptura clarified. He said when Allah finds a daif Allah, he abrogates that Allah.
Oh, classic. I like that.
And you didn't actually get this one in here. Player Fame point out that Allah also swears by a fig. I mean, he swears by all things visible, so that would include figs, but he explicitly swears by a fig, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's round about 91. That's in that chapter where he swears about 8 times. I think he swears by the olive, the fig, the mansions, and other things. Yeah.
Safraz, of course, so he said that he had to get to another debate, and then he said the debate was canceled, and then he left anyway. But before he left, he offered this defense, which I imagine will be the standard Islamic defense. Allah swears by some of his creation because they are his signs and creations, so they are indicative of his lordship, divinity, oneness, knowledge, might, will, mercy, wisdom, greatness, and glory. I asked Safras how that made sense. If he was still here, I would ask him, how swearing by a star demonstrates the mercy of Allah, or swearing by the things invisible shows his knowledge, or anything else specific. Of course, these are just empty words as near as I can tell.
Well, no doubt at some point today, tomorrow, I'm going to go to the toilet and do a number 2. It seems a shame to flush it away because Allah's going to swear by it. But still, it'll be unseen to me. So 1 minute seen, next unseen. So it doesn't matter because Allah's still going to swear by it. So hey ho.
Yep. If anyone wants to come up, Safraz was here earlier. I think he left, either that or he pretended to leave and didn't really leave. And then of course we had Jason Bourne in the chat for a bit before I blocked him for the 43rd time, I believe. This is at least the 4th time I've blocked that specific username of his. At first I thought it was someone pretending to be him, and then it turned out to actually be him, so he got away with it for a little while. But if anyone wants to join us live, you can just go to theology.chat, or you can click the link which I'm putting in the chat now. We'll give people a couple minutes. What's that?
I was going to say, you have to teach me how I can put my avatar instead of the gray screen.
Yeah, we'll figure that out after we sign off. We'll give people a couple minutes to join us, but if not, we'll be signing off here. The moral of the story is Allah swears by his creation, therefore his creation is, he doesn't swear by his creation, he swears by the creation, which means the creation is superior to Allah, which means he couldn't have created it. Therefore, he is not God and not worthy of worship. He might be a powerful being, a demigod, if you will. That would be consistent, I would say, with Christian belief that Allah is Satan. So he does have some power and he can do some things. But when he swears, he has to swear by something greater than himself. So since his yes just can't mean yes, he swears by his creation and his fig tree and his pigs.
And if you get caught up in a situation during your life, maybe somebody hits your car, rear ends you, and you come out and you start using expletives, and somebody turns and says, "My word, you've got a potty mouth." You just turn around and say, "Listen, mate, you need to read the Quran if you're looking at potty mouth. Look at Allah, check him out."
Yeah, but like, I swear by much less than Allah. And you know what? Safraz, when he was in here earlier, he told us we are all going to hell. But when I die and I face Allah, not that I will, but just for pretend, if I faced Allah, I'd say, he'd be like, "You committed shirk, you're going to hell." And I'd be like, "I committed 99.999 billion less shirk than you because I only believed in the Trinity. I did not believe in all the stars being deities."
My word. Right.
All right.
I hope that was a good show. I hope people enjoyed that. Something a little bit different.
Yeah, I think this is a really good one. And I think that, use this, challenge Muslims, ask them why their God swears by creation. And if they be prepared for them to say, it demonstrates his majesty and whatnot that Safra says. And then, say how. How does swearing by creation demonstrate his majesty or his mercy or his knowledge or anything else? All it demonstrates is that he is stupid and swears by something that's supposedly inferior.
Exactly.
All righty. Any closing thoughts from you?
No, I just want to say thank you to the audience for joining us tonight. I want to thank you, Thaddeus, for allowing me to come on the show and present this material. I'm still trying to get used to speaking into a screen. You could probably tell that I'm a little bit disconnected. It's not like speaking to somebody in person, which is something I'm very familiar with. But I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. Hopefully, we can collaborate and do something again in the future. I want to thank the audience as well. And I did notice I spied with my little eye earlier on a certain Mr. Lloyd de Jong being in the chat. Is that true?
He was.
Hello there, Lloyd. Looking forward to speaking to you soon. And to everybody else, Phil Haroya, forgive me if I've mispronounced that name. Dragon Daenerys, of course, she's always chit-chatting. Dazuda Dude, absolutely. Sola Scriptura, all of you, thank you very much for your kind comments. And I hope that the information presented tonight is of some benefit. And at the very least, hope you enjoyed it.
Excellent. So I will be live on the Testifies channel tomorrow. I'll post the link for that shortly. I will be discussing source criticism of the Quran, another way that Allah seems to be inferior to his creation because he copies from human authors in his all perfect speech that existed from all eternity. And as you know, 100% his divine knowledge with scientific miracles and whatnot. He copies word for word from human authors, strangely enough. So be on the lookout for that. Have a great rest of your weekend. God bless.
Bye-bye.
All right. We should be backstage.